Hi, and thanks again for joining us for Saturn Infotech's FP&A webinar. Today, Saturn's experts will be talking about the best practices in FP&A for Hyperion users. So first off, I'd like to introduce our speakers. We have Sriram, he is our Senior EPM Consultant, Matt, our BI EPM Practice Director, and myself, Nina, I'm the Marketing Manager. On today's agenda, by telling you a little bit about Saturn Infotech, an overview of the FP&A process, the common pain points surrounded by these three areas of people, process, tools, and technology, and then a demonstration about Saturn's solution to create efficiency. And at the end, I'll open it up for questions. So a little bit about Saturn. Saturn is an Oracle Platinum partner uniquely qualified to develop custom BI and EPM, big data, and cloud specialized solutions. We have a diverse client base made up of Fortune 500 companies of all trades and have been recognized for fast growth and outstanding management by Inc. magazine and other prestigious award programs. Saturn is headquartered just outside Philadelphia. We have offices up and down the East Coast as well as Chicago and Texas. We have over 250 consultants globally with coverage in nearly every U.S. state. Here are some of the clients that Saturn has worked with. All right, now I'll hand it off to Matt.
Good afternoon, everybody. The slide that you're looking at right now is cloud and in the enterprise ecosystem. Essentially, the purpose of this slide is to give you kind of a high-level overview or schematic of the service offerings within a traditional IT environment and also what Oracle offers as well. Saturn kind of sits in the middle of this space, the EPM and the business intelligence area, and all the areas in between that link these areas. So financial cycle impact levers is one of the first things that I wanted to touch upon before we get into the details, because the FP&A process and financial planning and actuals, coordination, and also forecasting are about three major things: people, process, technology, and information. Each one of these areas together, sometimes individually, will impact the efficacy of whether or not your organization is operating cleanly and efficiently in this area. For example, sometimes when you're looking at a new solution, do we have the skills? Will people need to acquire new skills? How many tasks have been added to the position? Change in behavior, culture, people that are set in their ways, maybe they like doing it the old way. I've been doing it for 20 years this way. I'm satisfied with it, and I'm comfortable with it. Process, how we change our work methods. Again, this is also rooted in some of the people that who were the old owners or legacy owners kind of dictate the tempo of how things are done, and maybe it's not the most efficient way to do them. Change in the reports, outputs, how do you deliver your reports, how long does it take, and finally, technology and information. Changes from manual input to automated processes, change in depth and breadth of information. How do we look at our information, or how, more importantly, how do we need to look at our information? So when we look at this as a high-level planning cycle process, and we also want to look at this in conjunction with the forecast because it's very similar. So for example, when we have high-level profit targets, they're established at the high level by major business segment and or region. Those high-level targets are communicated down to the field. Business process owners take those high-level targets, convert them into planning drivers, and then other key stakeholders look at certain things like expense, derive planning assumptions, planning levels are established. Here's where you start running into the problem in a manual world, is that these targets are not always communicated cleanly across the organization. So whenever you're looking at high-level planning considerations or looking to improve or enhance one of the pillars of what you do organizationally to support your financial cycles, what you want to do is you want to understand what are the planning drivers? What are the revenue drivers? What are the cost drivers? What are the planning dimensions? How do we look at our, is it lean alignment driven? Is it segment driven? Can we unify them? What kind of account detail do we want? What level are we going to go down to? Does it make sense to go down to that level? And then the other items are workflow, approval-based business roles, which are change management and process. Basically, how the flow of information or how things are going to get done. Who's going to be responsible for what? Who's going to review it to make sure it's accurate? And once we're done with this process, does it provide meaningful information or insight into our business? And finally, generate and develop reporting from that. So the FP&A process is really a culmination of 3 items: actual, plan, and forecast. And for those of you that use budget interchangeably with plan, that's really just a full year's operational plan or your budget. So for example, like the actual, typically the cadence for actuals is monthly collection. Change management and integration are one of the considerations whenever you're dealing with actuals. Legal and management reporting. Let's travel back to change management and integration a little bit. The change management and integration really means that does our organization have the people in place to recognize those changes in accounts and or cost centers that will impact our reporting and the way we collect information? Is it going to be accurate? Is it going to be relevant? Is it going to be timely? Planning. Usually planning has a starting period. You know, most people that are on the calendar year start somewhere in September and then somewhere between the, January and February of the following year. Whenever we're developing this, we identify what source files we're going to use, what planning level inputs we're going to use, and this is somewhat limited based on the way we accumulate the information. Forecast, similar, rolling versus calendar. Rolling forecast meaning looking out 12 months. I'm always want to be 12 months out from wherever I am at a given point in time. Calendar means that I'm just looking at fiscal year. I'm just going to forecast out to the end of the year and replace files with actuals. And then the forecast level inputs. So what are the pain points and impacts? The pain points and impact really around these whole areas are coordination of actual plan forecast, and the data is challenging. So what does that basically mean? Is version control. What's the process? The technology and process on the left-hand side you see in the blue box are the things that kind of alleviate and mitigate those challenges. They impact actual plan and forecast. Planning and forecast levels misaligned. Essentially what this means is not the way we look at the business. We do a forecast, we have a very high-level view, we may have a deeper slice into it, but essentially it's all guesswork, it's all done manually, and our reporting is somewhat limited. Manual effort, again, speaks to process, version control, financial transparency. How do we come up with these numbers? Who's making the assumptions? Are the assumptions being adhered to? That impacts the technology. Technologically, we're not efficient. No matter how well we understand our business, the methods for how we get it out aren't efficient. Then alignment of management and legal reporting. Again, that kind of speaks back to linking your operational plan with your legal plan, having them in one spot. And that impacts plan and forecast and data from disparate sources. So we look at people, process, and technology. How do people get this information? Do they understand what they're using, what we need as an organization, and how that impacts actual plan and forecast environments? At this point, I'd like to hand it off to Sri to show you some of the areas where we consider best practice and how you can alleviate some of these pain points.
Thanks, Matt, for such a wonderful process about FP&A. Let me do one thing. Let me walk you through planning environment and how we can deal with all the pain points that we discussed out. So first, I'm going to start with the last point which Matt spoke about. That's your disparate sources. So what happens in a planning process is, when you start with your planning and budgeting process, the information that is required at a detailed level for going through the entire budgeting cycle comes from various sources. Now these sources may range from your ERP system to Excel files to QuickBook files or your simple, I would say, manual created Excel files, CSV files. So any format of source can be there for your budgeting process. Now, to keep one version of truth as well as to track all these disparate sources and to kind of bundle them together into a single application, it's quite difficult to handle this situation. And to handle this kind of situation on a Hyperion world, Hyperion has come up with a product called FP&A. That's your Financial Data Quality Management Enterprise Edition, which comprises of your Enterprise Resource Planning Integrator and ODI, that's your Oracle Data integrated together. So that tool not only can link up to various ERP systems as well as can perform data messaging. It's basically a ETL tool, that's your extract, transform and load tool, which performs data messaging and then load the information into your planning. Now this tool has capability of directly linking up with ERP systems as well as has adapters available. Adapters in the sense, I would name a few adapters such as your open source interface. This is a ODI adapter, global adapter, which allows to link to any of the source system. So this tool can be used to link up all your disparate sources to get your actual numbers into the planning application. Now going with the second point where Matt mentioned out regarding misalignment of your management and legal hierarchies. So this can be again tackled in this application by going through your alternate hierarchies. So if I go to my dimensions in this application, this is a sample demo application that we have. And if I go through my different structures that are available, so I can show you that how my management wants to see the roll-ups of my cost centers, my entities or my subsidiaries, as well as what is the legal roll-up that has been specified in my organization. I can have both the roll-ups running simultaneously in the application and giving me the perfect reporting structure that I need. Another process that Matt talked about is misguidance of your drivers, assumptions throughout the organization. So this again can be handled in this application by creating a global as well as local drivers. So if I go through the application and if I show you some of the forms where you can see that based on my entire process of planning and budgeting, my FP&A process, wherever there are centralized assumptions in the sense, okay, what is going to be merit increase for headcount numbers, or is my fringe percentage on benefits or on compensations, on commissions, it's going to be static throughout the company, or my tax rates will depend on based on my region. So in this way, I can have assumptions defined in an application at a centralized level as well as at your local level. So if you look at this particular form, which I am opening up, so in this form you will see that hold on, let me just open up the driver forms and I can show you. So if I look at this expense driver form, right now in this form I have both the kind of drivers defined. there are centralized drivers that are available, as well as I have local drivers applicable to individual subsidiary. So that takes care of your problem where how does your assumptions work out throughout the industry. Another process was manual efforts, where what happens that when you are doing budgeting and planning at an Excel level, you are not sharing a single version of truth between the users, as well as there is no centralized repository, as well as what happens that users are not able to communicate with each other if your task is dependent on other people's tasks. So to handle that kind of situation, planning has got something called as task list and workflow. So in task list, I can define my own task list. So if you see on the left hand side, this is the task list that has been defined. In this task list, I can go through specific tasks that has to be followed to go through my FP&A or my budgeting process. And I can have an approval workflow process set up with this task list also, where once I'm done with my FP&A process, I can go ahead and submit out this information for approval to higher management. Another process that Matt talked about was issues with your reporting. So now with reporting, sometimes when users have HFM applications also, that's your auditing or consultation applications also build up in the organization, then what happens is my actual numbers are coming up through my HFM application, but my budgeting and planning numbers are again coming through my planning application. At that kind of scenario, I need a reporting tool which is capable of getting information not only from my HFM environment, but also from my planning and budgeting environment. So at that time, I need to make sure that I'm able to get information from separate application. Other problems that user faces are they have already predefined their Excel sheets workbooks available. So now these workbooks they want to utilize to link up through this application. So at that time what I can do is I can use up my application to generate following reports based on my Excel sheets, workbooks. To give an example of a few of the reports, let me just take you through account detail report. So if I open up this report has capability of having line item details about my accounts, as well as it gives me functionality to enter comments and annotations on the report. So now let's say a user, a manager is reviewing this report and they want to look at the annotations of this report. They can go through and apply annotations on that. They can go through the your comments, as well as I can export this information directly into your Excel and other Office environments. I can run this reports as a parameterized report for different areas. Now, as most of the financial users are already familiar with your Excel, so this tool again comes up with capability to perform Adhoc analysis, or I would say free-form slice and dice capability on the information from the users or from the application. So let's say I want to generate my own report with specifically looking at some of the accounts or some of the entities. I can generate up that report, and it's not kind of an Excel-like, it's pure Excel functionality that you are using with the power of your Hyperion tool. So let me just log in into the environment, connect to the application. So you can see whatever form structures that we saw on the web, they are directly available on Excel, as well as I can perform free-form Adhoc analysis on this application, where I can look up details by different dimensions, by different members. I can select different members based on my selection criteria available. I can place them separately in vertical or horizontal rows. So you can see I can pretty much play around with this application. I can manually input numbers. I can perform drill downs into the application, and this is a live connection that is set up with the application to get information from your system. So users can create their own ad hoc reports, their ad hoc forms, and save it for future reference apart from the pre-designed skeleton reports that has been created for this application. Now, I will leave the floor open for the questions. If any of you have questions, please let me know.
Thanks, Sriram and Matt. And also, if you have any questions that you'd like to email us, you can shoot us an email at sales@saturninfotech.com. Okay, we do have one question that just came up. So the question was, what is the typical implementation time frame for Hyperion planning projects?
Might you want to take that out?
It depends on the level of detail that you want to go through, the type of drivers that you want to use in your planning process. That can go anywhere from 3 to 6 months in that time frame. Especially if we already have your actual environment lined up and we understand the dimensions that you're going to be planning off of. It's a fairly quick process. Then it just becomes semantics and the type of drivers that you're going to use.
Thanks, Matt. All right, so next question that was asked is, can I leverage my existing Excel workbook reports on top of Hyperion Planning?
Yes. So, for example, let's say your company or organization have its own Excel workbook which has some complex formulas that goes through. So what we can do is we can use that same Excel workbook and have Hyperion Planning as a feeder system to feed this information to the main Excel sheet, and based on that you can have reports running. You can have your own Excel dashboards that are predefined, pre-standardized by your organization. You can use that.
And you can also link them into the existing application.
All right. Another question is, can I have my actuals coming from HFM and planning and budgeting, and my planning and budgeting numbers from a planning system in my report?
Yes. So, for example, if I have a financial report, so in that financial report, I can create 2 grids. One grid actually sets up a database connection to HFM application, and the other grid can set up a connection to planning or S-based application. And I can use formulas to refer values from one grid to another grid, as well as in the same grid I can change database connections for single rows. That can be, this functionality can be used to generate your actual versus budget, or have different forecast reports. Forecast reports in the sense you can have 9+3 or 6+6 or 3+9 or 10+2, where the initial first represents your actual information coming from a different system. The other represents your forecast or your budget values coming from a planning system.
Okay. We do have another question that is, can I have the system calculate tax rates by entity?
Yes. So you can set up calculations, business rules, where you can define the tax calculations by entities, for where you can have, I would say, a driver-based form which defines the percentage linked to each entity, and that based on that you can calculate taxes in the application. Yeah.
All right. I think we'll wrap it up after this one. Thank you everyone again for joining. And like I said earlier, if you have any questions about what was discussed throughout this webinar, please feel free to email us. The email is sales@saturninfotech.com. Thanks again. We hope you'll join our next webinar.